Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bruno Mata. I'm the program advisor of the Executive Masters in Finance and Financial Markets. Today, we would like to introduce you to the Executive Masters in Finance and Financial Markets in the voice of the academic director. This is an opportunity to learn how you can take the next step in your professional career, investing in your development by choosing Nova SB. In this session, we will explain you how this choice can involve pursuing this master's, which is a 2-semester program with classes scheduled for 2 days a week in the first semester, and in the second semester, dedicated to developing a work project. Allow me to introduce you to the academic director of the Executive Masters, Professor Paulo Soares Pinho, PhD in Banking and Finance from City University at PAI's Business School. He's an academic director of the Lisbon MBA and associate professor at Nova SB. He is also a visiting professor at PAI's Business School and at the University of Luxembourg. He has an experience as a professor, director, and coordinator of programs for executives, as well as pre- and post-experience master's degrees. He was a director of Sonai Capital, ran Change Partners and Biotech. He has an extensive activity as a consultant to financial companies in London and Portugal. Professor Paulo teaches and researches in areas such as banking, corporate finance, private equity, and venture capital. We will now have a brief presentation of the master's program, followed by an opportunity to answer any questions you may have. To do this, please use the Q&A button in the menu bar that you see in your screen, and you can submit your questions there. You can ask questions as well throughout the presentation, and then we will answer them at the end. I now hand over the presentation to Professor Paulo.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this session. The purpose of today's session is to make a very brief presentation of the Executive Masters in Finance. So I have a few slides to share with you, but I think it's better most of the time to keep things in a very simple and informal way. So I'm going essentially to give you the basic ideas, what we do with these Executive Masters, and then we open the floor for Q&A, questions you may have. To begin with, what is Executive Master? So an Executive Master is a master's for people who have already considerable experience. The law requires 5 years. So it's for people who have already a working experience, and it works at particular moments in time, such as evenings and some Saturday mornings, to try to conciliate people's working, family, and academic lives. So the number of contact hours is lower than that on the normal, let's say, pre-experienced masters. That's because it's really aimed at people with considerable workloads on their jobs. However, this doesn't mean that the masters itself doesn't have workload to consider. By the contrary. So the master's is basically designed to cover essentially the key areas of corporate finance and financial markets. Actually, it runs in parallel to 2 postgraduate programs, one in corporate finance and one in financial markets. And students in these masters share courses with the students on those postgraduate programs. They are all subject to the same rules and all evaluated the same way on those courses. But the people who take the Executive Masters have to comply with the specific rules demanded by law and the organization of these masters for people who want to get, in the end, and this should be the aim, the academic degree of Masters in Finance. So let's have a look at what we're looking at. So from our perspective, we seek people with high potential. Really, a master's in finance is very demanding intellectually. So we aim for people who have the intellectual capabilities, but also have the basic scientific fundamentals to be able to attend this program. This is not a PhD on astrophysics. This is not anything like that. So, but we require some basic knowledge on two very simple areas: elementary calculus and statistics. So it's aimed for people who already possess the knowledge of these areas that is taught on any really undergraduate program in economics, business, engineering, mathematics, and even psychology. So areas where you have a basic calculus and a basic and elementary statistics course. So you need to know about probability and statistics, which are key elements in the critical area of finance, which is risk. Finance is about one thing: value. It's about value of firms. And now we can finance a firm in order to try to sustain the value creation process of the firm. And a key element of value is cash flow, but the other key element of value is risk. So we need a kind of two legs to be able to do a master's in finance. We need to start understanding what are cash flows, where they come from. And this is kind of elements that we start studying right at the beginning of the program. And what is risk, the different types of risk, and how we measure risk. And that also starts at the beginning of the program. For this last part, we need some basic knowledge of elementary calculus, as I say, and statistics. So this is what we are looking at. You need to have an undergraduate degree. That's what the law requires. You can't become a master's without being a licenciado or bachelor's before. You may be more interested on focusing in an area of corporate finance, and therefore during the program you try to specialize more on this area, or you can later try to focus more on areas of financial markets, risk management, portfolio management. Whichever course you try to follow, at the beginning these are the things we need: quantitative background, and then once you enter the master's, you need to take quite a few mandatory courses on the basic fundamental areas of that are required on these masters. Before someone asks a question, do you need to have a previous degree on economics or management or even, God forbid, accounting? No, you don't. This is for people who have a quantitative background. That's what we require. You don't need to have a background in accounting, because we really have a course that starts with financial statement analysis, and we cover what you need to know there. We are not going to become an accountant after taking these masters, and it's something that this masters is not about, is accounting. This is not a master's in economics. So here and there on different courses we expose to economics issues, but this is not a master's in economics, and you don't require having previous knowledge in economics. And this is not a master's in management, so you don't need to have exposure to marketing, strategy, etc. Although, of course, in courses, in more advanced courses in corporate finance, we're going to touch these areas. This is all about finance. This is an executive course, so compacted on time. So it's very specialized. And what we require from you is academic background and the ability to undertake these courses with success. So what can we expect from our side? Well, we expect to be trained on the fundamentals of corporate finance. Courses are all of them taught by people from our core faculty in the Masters of Finance of Nova. As you know, if you don't, you should know, Nova's Masters in Finance is ranked very, very high in the Financial Times, in the world. It depends on the year, but I'll say always in the world between number 10 and number 20 in the world, not in Europe, in the world. And the people who lecture on this program are the people who lecture on the other program. So this is not on that regard, as we see in many executive masters, something taught by people paid by the hour to give a few lectures. No, you get the same faculty that is Nova's core Masters in Finance, something that is important to know. So even the people who are not members of the permanent faculty, because they are working elsewhere, there's quite a few very experienced practitioners teaching in this program. They are also teaching on the Masters in Finance. So the people lecturing this program are core faculty and guest faculty that teach the core Masters of Finance of Nova. So, for instance, you have guest lecture on the course of risk management, you have a guest lecture on the course of portfolio management. They are the same, who teach the same courses at the full-time Masters of Finance. That's what we do. We work first on the fundamentals, and maybe on the first couple of months we say lots of theory. Well, you can't apply theory without knowing it first. And this is not a school that is known for giving you recipes and formulas and go and apply the formulas without understanding what they mean. The great thing about finance is most of the time formulas are useless unless you know what they are about. And in the real world, there are lots of practical issues when applying them. So you need to know what's behind them and need to know what you should apply in every particular circumstances. It's amazing the number of times I see people, practitioners who work in finance 16 hours a day, making absurd mistakes because they memorized some formulas they never understood. So that's what we do. First, you need to understand the fundamentals. You need to understand the fundamentals of of corporate finance and financial markets. That's where we start. Later on the advanced courses, then we start introducing case studies. And being in Portugal, unfortunately, I'm forced to say this, that I don't feel the need to say I'm lecturing abroad. If you're paying a considerable amount of money to study on an executive master's, you better read the case studies before going to class, because you can't say teaching is very theoretical, and then when it becomes practical, don't go to class prepared without having read the case studies. Unfortunately, I need to say these things in Portugal. I don't need to say these things in any other country where I have lectured, from the United States to the UK to Luxembourg. I never had to say this, but in Portugal, I need to say this. So yes, we use case studies and you need to read them. Otherwise, you won't understand. You won't even understand the class. You learn absolutely nothing. And then you cannot say that the lecturing has not been applied, because when it comes to be applied, it involves even more work than when we have to work in the theoretical sides. So case studies, yes, they're going to become a critical element later on. When you say rigorous and demanding academic environment, is because, I'm going to be very honest with you, a master's in finance from Nova cannot be purchased, needs to be earned. We are going to evaluate you and grade you, and with the same rigor as we evaluate any other student. Why? To defend the value of the diploma. A diploma only has value if the market outside knows that people went through a selection process, and then had to be exposed to very rigorous teaching, but also have been exposed to rigorous evaluation. In other words, when I say, and we had the case last year, that this person has a master's in finance from Nova with an 18, I want people to know that this 18 represents a very high quality individual, and not someone who paid for some fees and attended some classes and got some passes at some courses by attending the sessions and writing something very, very minimal. I had a case a few years ago in one of the postgraduate programs where a student sent me an email complaining he had failed the course. And the reason he was complaining, he said, well, I'm too old now to study. Well, I was very direct. If you're too old to study, you shouldn't be here in the first place, because you are going to expose to theoretical fundamentals. You need to study them, you need to understand them, and you need to show that you have good command of those theoretical fundamentals, and then when you go to applied courses, that you are able to apply them on the real world. That's what we want from you in the end. And if people who get this master's degree, get this knowledge, go to the market, go to the market later on, and impress the people they work for with their competence, well, that's the best thing you can do to the value of this master's diploma. So what we're doing is not just protecting the value of the Nova brand, we are above all protecting the value of what our students are paying for. And this is what every good school does in the world, and Nova belongs to the top European business schools, and this is the way we have operated since 1977. And we're talking about because I joined Nova as a student back in 1980. So, and I was exposed as a student to that rigor on the 3 programs I did at this school. So, not demanding to others what wasn't demanded from us. So, what kind of people have attended this program? Always have a group from economics and management, especially people who did pre-Bologna undergraduate programs, but also people who even have a master's in economics and now want to do finance, and people with a master's in management, but now they need finance. Lots of engineers. Engineers usually do very well in programs like this because they have the quantitative tools and they have the required analytical training. We have architects, mathematicians, physicists, I don't know. And even people from some areas of social sciences with good academic backgrounds. So don't get much impressed when you say physics there. Physics are an exception, although for PhD programs, PhDs in finance, we get a lot of people from physics, because mathematics used at the PhD level are very similar with the mathematics used at the physics PhD level. But at this level, what we need in terms of mathematics is basic calculus, of course, derivatives, sometimes a little bit of combinatorial analysis, but just a little bit because of the statistics part. But it's basically this. And we need probability and statistics. So people need to know what is a probability distribution, this normal distribution, and basically play a little bit with statistical tests. That's what we need in quantitative areas. Nothing else, nothing more than this. Application. Well, like I said, the important thing, by the way, English is used in most of the materials. Finance is basically an area where everything is written in English. If you see something written in Portuguese, it's most likely totally outdated because things happen very, very fast, and this country is too small for having good updated materials in our language. But more than that, our faculty, because this is a very international school, our faculty is nowadays more than 50% foreign. So in a master's like this, some professors are non-Portuguese, and therefore they will teach in English. Others will be Portuguese, but the materials we all use are in English. So as a rule, we only lecture in Portuguese if everybody in the room is fluent in Portuguese. Otherwise, we do classes in English. I had in the past situations with classes in English. I had situations in the past with classes in Portuguese. It all depends on the people we have. But I must say that in the last few years, English has been the predominant situation because we get more and more foreign students. Bruno mentioned the 2 semesters. Well, just to violate a simple a mathematical rule. Here, these two halves are not identical. The first semester, let's call it like that, is much bigger than the second semester. Why? Well, we need almost, let's say, 2/3 or more of the academic year to cover the courses. I mean, our purpose is not to rush through the fundamentals, to give you time to mature knowledge, to give you time to study. Instead of bombarding you with class after class, we like to have 2 classes per week. Let things take their time. I've been lecturing finance for 30 years or so. And one thing, it's very clear to me that finance is an area where we need time to mature the concepts. My opinion, there is absolutely nothing complicated here. Nothing. In finance, there is nothing complicated, but requires consistent thought, coherent thought, and the articulation of concepts one on top of the other. And this takes time. So we take our time, like you go through all these concepts, and we take our time in order for you to have the time to work and to study. Yes, it requires study. It's not one of those areas where you watch a couple of videos, someone giving a so-called inspirational talk, to take a few notes and do an exam. No, nothing like that. There is academic rigor, because there is also mathematical rigor in finance. So you need to understand the concepts and need to apply them. So we need you to take your time. We start with mandatory courses. I'll show you which ones and why are these the ones. And then when you finish everything, take a short break, and then you can start working on your final work project, your final thesis. We are not seeking academic papers as the thesis on an executive master's. That's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for a scientific project, an academic paper. That's not at all the idea. The idea is for you to do something very applied. My recommendation to students usually is write your work. It's a 25-page work plus exhibits. Write your work in something you are comfortable with, preferably something where you are working on. The best thesis last year was basically written by someone on something he was working on at the time, and you could see he was very passionate about his job and what he was working, and it was his passion and the knowledge he had about the topic that allowed him basically to a brilliant work. And that's my recommendation. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't try to come up with something revolutionary. Do something very applied on something you like. I had another, for instance, one of the people who worked with me on the thesis, his job was in the area of M&A. For confidentiality reasons, he couldn't work on any deal that he was involved in his activity. So I suggested him a deal that's of a publicly listed firm, because it's very easy to find information. And since he applied the tools and techniques and things he uses on his day-to-day job, it was very easy and straightforward for him to do that thesis. So typically, I tell people, don't think of the thesis as a masterpiece. Think of the thesis as something you can then apply your knowledge on something of your day-to-day life, or even if it's not your day-to-day life, some area that you particularly liked or enjoyed. It doesn't need to be sacrifice, should above all be something where we have some joy and some fun. Courses. The basics of everything we do are in 3 of these courses. Financial investments is the basics of value, basics of risk. As I told you, finance is all about value and risk. So That's the basics. How we value a bond, a stock, any security really. Risk is a critical element of it. How we measure risk, how we incorporate risk on the valuation. How do we come up with a very critical concept in finance, which is that of the cost of capital. So it's basically the fundamentals of corporate finance, really. Either being in finance applied to corporations, which is the second course here, corporate finance, where we use a lot of the tools from this financial investments course, but more applied to companies' corporate finance decisions, how we value a capital project, an investment decision, go or no go, how do you make an investment decision, key elements on the decisions on how to finance a company, how much debt, what is excessive debt, what is insufficient debt. Yes, there is such thing as insufficient debt. Dividend policy, the basic fundamentals of corporate financing decisions. And then, if on the first course you talked about risk, and the second course basically we talk about the cash flows, then how do we manage that risk using financial derivatives? Very simple course on financial derivatives, the basic financial derivatives, forwards and futures, can't be simpler than that, and swaps actually, missing from the title. Also in parallel, for those of you who have never been exposed to accounting, what is balance sheet, P&L, how do we analyze the accounts of a company, and how can we then use those numbers, for instance, in the context of corporate finance. Critical now these days, ethics, and of course, in today's environment, societal standards, more these two than the G for governance, because later on there is autonomous course on corporate governance. Then, on the optional course, we have a set of optionals in the corporate finance area, and a set of optionals on risk and capital markets. So in corporate finance area, the big course is applied corporate finance and restructuring, which is basically a course on case studies. So, okay, now you know the basics, let's apply them. It's the classical case where you only learn if you read every single case, go to class prepared. I remember a couple of years ago, we had a gentleman from Gabon, I think, in Africa. We had to fly every week to attend classes, was always fully prepared, and always prepared the cases. It was better prepared than people who had a 20-minute ride to go to class. And there is a corporate finance management control, critical area. Sometimes you say what you manage is what you measure. I've been a board member and director in several companies, 2 of them publicly listed. And an area which I always wanted under my wing is management control. Because management control is where you have the numbers. And you know better what's going on in the company if you control the activities of the firm. And in the end, the only way to understand where you're making money, where you're creating or destroying value, is to have a proper management control system. It's a critical area on management in general. My humble opinion, you can't manage anything without having proper management control. It's one of the key areas of management from someone who has more than 20 years experience can tell you. Taxation. This taxation is basically corporate taxation, critical area. A lot of cash of the firms go out in taxes, so you better understand that in countries like this, there are always 7 different ways of doing the same thing, and each one of them is a different tax implication. So you need to understand those, and corporate governance. So how we structure the decision-making process in the firm? What is the articulation between management and shareholders and other stakeholders? What kinds of structure do we have at the board of directors level? What are the control mechanisms that may eventually prevent management from taking excessive risk, or to prevent fraud, to prevent situations of asymmetry of objectives between management and shareholders? Corporate governance is also a critical area. On the financial markets and risk side, obvious courses, fixed rate. So basically managing bond portfolios, asset and liability management, as we call it. You may have heard of the Silicon Valley Bank blunder. Well, basically, it's a classical case of very bad understanding of fixed income economics and very bad asset and liability management. That's the only thing that killed the bank, not understanding how to manage the assets and liabilities, and basically not using the appropriate fixed income tools. Options. Why? Are we obsessed with options as financial instruments? Definitely not. But options are present in everything we do in our life. Everything we do in life. An option is a right, but not the obligation of doing something. When we have the right to do something, but not the obligation, then probably we only exercise that right if it suits us, and will not exercise that right if it doesn't suit us. So you have the option to vote this Sunday, for instance, but not the obligation. In Brazil, you have a fine if you don't vote. So you exercise the option if you think it pays to do so. So options are present everywhere. There are financial options traded on markets. When a company makes a capital project, an investment, we may face a situation where it can build a big factory, or maybe build a smaller factory and buy some land to have the option later on to expand the factory if then the demand justifies it. Well, these are simple examples of what are called real options. So in the real world, real life, besides financial markets, options are present all over the place. So options also play a big role in corporate finance. And applied corporate finance, for instance, when we discuss one particular type of instruments, which are convertible debt, well, convertible debt will be converted into equity only if the bondholder thinks it's good for her. So there is another option. So options are a critical element in finance. I said it's also impossible to understand finance without understanding options. Stock market research, there's really the right name, I don't know why someone put his name here, is equity research. So, so a fixed rate or fixed income is basically focused on bonds. This course is focused on stocks. And then you have credit risk, which is a course focused on instruments with credit risk, bonds, and of course credit default swaps, which is a credit risk derivative. So these are the different areas of risky financial instruments, fixed income instruments, equity instruments, credit risk instruments, options. And then you put all those things together into courses. Asset management, managing portfolios, which may have different elements of all these areas that I just mentioned, and market risk. How do you measure the risk of a portfolio? And how do you manage the risk of that portfolio? So these are the more comprehensive courses. So essentially, this is the structure of the program. And I see that we have on the chat box, the Q&A box.
Yes, we do have some questions. We can actually go to our...
I can go through the questions. How to translate in Portuguese? I don't think so, but since the course is in English, probably
yes.
Keep this. In terms of degree qualifications, no, there are no. At the end of the day, the people get a master's. That's it. The law has these different degrees: licenciado, master's, doctor. This is a master's. So, legally speaking, is the same. Of course, since the diploma says executive masters, people may see you in a different way. If it doesn't say executive, means that you took the masters before experience. The law makes this distinction. Executive masters are for people who already have 5 years of work experience. So the difference is on the work experience requirement. What I can assure you is, in terms of academic rigor, these two programs are equivalent. This is what I can guarantee you. That's my job here, to guarantee that this is not an easy track for a master's. So my goal has always been to protect the name of the school and the name of the program. Otherwise, I will be selling you, well, I don't sell anything. I will be selling you a worthless piece of paper, and that's not what I want. I have 3 diplomas, and 2 of them, actually 2 of them from Nova, and I am very happy that people through the decades kept preserving the value of those diplomas. In a few years, I won't need them anymore, but that opened me a lot of doors abroad. I mean, abroad, many different places will ask, so I'm from Portugal. And say, yeah, Portugal, right? Where are you from? I say Nova. Oh, people immediately change their view because they know we're talking about someone from a top school. I can tell you exactly. When first time I was, many years after leaving base, everybody I work on base had already retired. But someone I knew from other place and then joined base asked me if he wanted to become a professor. And the first English guy I met looked at me like, and the Portuguese guy, As soon as I said Nova, and then I already a PhD here. Okay, fantastic. You hired. No more conversations. But until I said Nova, it was like, where is this guy coming from? And it's something that's very important. Our most important asset is our brand. It's the brand you get on our diploma. And that is something we need to protect. Is the course more theoretical or practical? Second question kind of answered. The beginning is theoretical. And then my experience, students are very theoretical. Because in order to be practical, you need to read the stupid case studies. They're not stupid, actually, I love them. What I was doing in between, I'm going to resume, is work on one. Yes, you need to work. It's practical if you practice. I usually tell people on the first class of these masters the same thing I tell on the first class of the Lisbon MBA, of which I am the academic director as well. I tell them what you get from a program like this is what you put there. In the end, more important than our classes is your commitment. It's only practical if you make it practical. Because otherwise, you hear some people talking about a case study which you do not understand. And I, unfortunately, here, I had very frequently the experience of seeing people in class who were totally unprepared. I don't see that abroad. Maybe this also explains a few elements of the GDP gap. Is how people commit to things. It's more about fundamentals. I cannot explain. There is nothing stratospheric here. There is no more mathematical area in economics than finance, but it's at PhD level, not this level. This is a master's, not a PhD, and this is an executive master's. So you need the fundamentals. It can't be practical without the fundamentals. What we do in practice, or we should be doing in practice, is to apply the fundamentals. Unfortunately, I see people work on this on day-to-day basis. Actually, sometimes the worst students I have are people who work on this from a day-to-day basis because they don't know the fundamentals and go to class without taking the opportunity now to relearn the fundamentals, which they do not know, which is amazing. People will know a few formulas and they think that understanding the fundamentals is understanding a few formulas. No, it's not. Actually, most of the times the formulas don't work. So, no, you need to understand how things work. And so you need those theoretical fundamentals and then to go to apply them. So you need these 2 phases on the program. Some courses are mixed, for options. You start with theoretical fundamentals and then you do a comprehensive case study. In corporate finance, you do first the fundamentals course, which is 5 classes, and then you do the applied course, which is 8 classes. It can't be, so the applied course is 8 classes. It's a lot of applied with case studies. You can learn a lot if you commit yourself to do so. Is this course appropriate for an individual with professional experience and practice a corporate credit finance analyst and an academic background in economics? It depends on your academic background in finance. Well, it depends on your academic background in finance. That I don't know. I cannot answer with this. Because what I learned is that a lot of people work on these things on the real life, don't have the theoretical fundamentals, and they apply things without blindly, without really understanding too well what they are doing.
Just to add to those questions,
if this is aligned with the CFA program, not necessarily yes, and not necessarily no. This is not specifically designed for the CFA, covers the majority of the topics that you need to take the CFA. All courses have some kind of evaluation. Could be special fundamentals course, could be a sitting exam. Could be a take-home exam. Short courses very short course doesn't make sense to have a complicated exam. So maybe it could be other type of assignment, a project. I would say the larger courses all take an exam. Could be sitting exam, could be a take-home exam. Some courses will require group work on some kind of project. For instance, that course applied corporate finance, people on top of an exam, they need to work in groups on 2 different assignments. That is guaranteed. Other courses, shorter courses, typical 4-class, 5-class courses have an exam. Shorter courses may not have an exam. Are they in English? Well, you may answer in Portuguese if you want. There is no issue there. Hard to answer the exact number of people in class, because there are 3 programs here sharing the same classes. So fundamentals courses could be up to 40 people, about that. Electives, smaller, depending on which electives people choose. Definitely not 90 people. One question. Topics about M&A private equity. There is one course which is applied corporate finance and corporate restructuring, which addresses M&A and private equity. I mean, I'm lecturing that course, and these are things I work on the real world, so I'll definitely touch those issues. We have a lot of M&A and at least a couple of case studies on private equity. Yeah. Private equity from the perspective of corporate finance, not the perspective of private equity as an asset class. Now, we don't have to choose the optionals right at the beginning. At the end of the compulsory courses, and you have a better knowledge of the area, then you can start choosing your electives. I mean, all of them will be offered, so it's not an issue. Because there are 2 postgraduate, all those electives are part of 2 different postgraduate programs. They'll always be offered, so they'll always be there. So when the moment comes, when after you finish all the mandatory courses, then you go in and choose. Miriam asks a very difficult question in terms of weekly workload. depends on your background, depends on the person. Really depends on the person. It's very difficult to say. When I was a student, on my MBA, it was the first time I saw corporate finance. I did that novel, good old-fashioned economics course. We didn't have finance. So first time I learned finance was on my MBA, and it's the easiest course in the world, but it was me. And guess what? I remained in finance forever. So it depends on the people. Some people think this is easy, and because it's very much the mindset of economics. So someone with an economics background will find this very easy. Someone with a more quantitative background can find this very easy. But other people may need more time. So it depends on how farther you are from the traditional background. I would say the more you need to get involved. I would say that I typically see people coming from economics, except those who work in finance, coming from economics usually do very, very well because they come here to learn. So they invest and learn. There are people think I already know all of this. They usually do disastrously and study absolutely nothing. And then they get surprised and get very surprised because they are performing very, very badly. Even recently I had this experience on the MBA, a guy coming from an investment bank disastrously on the corporate finance course. All he was doing in his life was applying formulas, and typically, guess what, applying the wrong formula in the wrong place because he couldn't understand what he was doing. And we don't have formulas, by the way, as I usually say. We have concepts. If you learn this, then you have concepts, not formulas. And whatever you need to do comes naturally to you. I would say that you need to study every week. How many hours? I don't know. Depends on the person, really. At the beginning, anyone who hasn't seen anything on investments, investments is a demanding course. But last year we had students 20 and students who failed, and people with 20 coming from engineering. We had never seen that thing before. So it's a bit of, because as I said, there's nothing difficult here, really. It's a matter of, but there are a lot of concepts. You need to understand the concepts and how they articulate with each other. And this may involve some studying and some practicing, paper and pen, practicing, do a few exercises and try to review what was done in class, and see what understood, what was done in class, etc. Miriam asks very difficult questions. My answer is focus optional on things you like. It's simple as that. Or things you think could be useful for your future, even if you don't like them too much. Could be something like that. What's useful for the future? So what shall I? Since I like virtually all of those topics, there will be very difficult for me to choose. So I will choose the ones where I know less. So probably someone like me who has 20 plus years on corporate finance, I'll probably do options to review some things about options that last time I saw was 30 years ago on my PhD, or market risk because it's changing every day. So maybe there is something new I have missed. I don't know. So I'll probably choose things where I know less. But only if I think will be useful for me later on. I don't understand this one. Could you please recap on the application docs infos? I will leave this to Bruno because it seems to be more his area.
So we can then also reach out to these participants by email, but usually we request the recommendation letter, approval of your professional experience, the academic records, the curriculum, the motivation letter. So the common documents that you usually need for a master's degree application. Yeah. nothing too specific.
Someone asking from Bangladesh, sorry, my pronunciation of the name will be so terrible that I'm avoiding insulting you. I've completed a master's in accounting. Well, this is not about accounting, so could you be eligible? Yes, if you have a background in calculus and statistics. Master's impact on your career. Well, I usually say that a diploma doesn't change the person's career. Could be an MBA, could be anything, doesn't change the person's career. The person changes her career. The fact that you attended this program will only have an impact on your life if you make it have an impact in your life. In other words, it's not a piece of paper, and we try to make it, as I said, as valuable as possible. That's going to change your life, because that piece of paper is a passport that allows you to be accepted at some doors. However, people are interviewed, and if it's the skills, it's your ability to discuss particular subjects through the knowledge you gain or not gained in the program, that's going to impact your career. It's not a piece of paper, it's the knowledge. Sometimes when I see students in any program who seem too focused on getting the stupid piece of paper, I tell them, yes, you can get a very valuable piece of paper, but in the end, when you talk to a professional, it's the impression you make by your ability to discuss the kind of issues they are interested on. So it may have more or less impact depending on how much you put on the program. As I said, what you take from the program depends to a large extent on what you put on the program. You put less, it has less impact. You commit less, it has less impact. In the end, maybe you get the same piece of paper with a lower grade, you get the same piece of paper. But then you sit in front of someone, a professional. If you took very little, they will notice that. That's what's talking about. Valuation. Well, if you didn't talk about valuation, Jesus Christ, then we'll better close the program. Pedro Mendes, if you are interested on that, be prepared to suffer a lot at my hands, because you need to know how to do valuation. And it's definitely not as simple as discounting cash flows, if it were that simple. If it were that simple, no, it's a lot. There is a lot on valuation. There is a lot on valuation. Thank God, ChatGPT gets a lot of things wrong in terms of corporate valuation. As I tell my students, you still have a competitive advantage. You know things that ChatGPT gets wrong, because evaluation is an area where the worst source of technical information in the world in finance, called the internet, is in one area where the internet is full of stupidity. And yes, we are going to do case studies where if you apply blindly the traditional valuation methods, you are going to get everything completely wrong. So you need to understand, again, you need to understand the fundamentals to know how to apply those methodologies in particular practical situations. How much does the course expose students to this international market? I don't understand too much this question, because everything we do is international. Case studies are all international. Faculty is partial. Well, we are international. I am international. Even the Portuguese, all of them lecture internationally. And basically, we do the same thing as anywhere else in the world. That's why Nova's Finance Masters is on the top 20 in the world. Actually, last time I checked, I think it was 13 in the world. But I keep losing the track. We are in an international school. And what we do is international. On our masters, we have more Germans than Portuguese. Not in this one, but on pre-experience margins. On the corridors of the school, I hear German more often than I hear Portuguese. So gives you an idea. Yes, you know how to value an option. Especially, you are supposed to have a very simple introduction to options on the investments course, and you are supposed, if you want, to have an entire course on options, the more mathematical course in the entire program, with a professor who has a double PhD, a PhD in physics and a PhD in finance. So yes, you are in the right place to learn about options. Financial modeling. Something, this is not a course in accounting, but I use case studies where you need to do some modeling, yes. And on the course on equity research, you definitely need to do modeling. If you follow that course on equity research, you definitely need to do modeling. Sure, it all depends on where to go.
Perfect. Thanks, Professor. Thanks, everyone, for sending us very good questions about the program and about the structure of the program and the content.
Very good questions, actually.
Say that again, sorry?
Very good questions, actually.
Very good questions, indeed, yes. So I hope the session has been both informative and inspiring to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We can answer any questions by email. We can also do career advisory sessions, and they are available for scheduling through our website. Or you can also send an email to us. You'll find my email in several places, such as the website, the brochures of the program. Feel free to download the brochure and have more information on the documents for your application, the costs, information about scholarship. Everything is shared on the brochure. I would also like to share that we have an open day on April 9th at 5:30 p.m. And we are welcoming everyone at that day to visit our campus, meet our faculty, any potential colleagues, and again, clarify any questions that you may have. So again, thank you very much for your participation. And I would also like to have
you have a question, Bruno,
thank you
on the deadline.
Professor. Yep, go ahead.
I have a question there on the deadline.
Okay. The application. So the next deadline would be the 15th of April. But again, I would advise you to submit as soon as you can. As soon as you gather your documents, we can go through the application and we can then give you some feedback. But the next deadline is 15th of April.
Something that wasn't on the presentation but could be relevant is we may require some people before joining the program to take an online course on quantitative issues. We have to do this more and more to make sure that some people that we feel through the analysis of the CV and the interview that may have some of the quantitative skills but needing some brush up to take that course to refresh things on statistics or elementary calculus. But by calculus, I mean basically derivatives is probably the only thing you really need to know.
Perfect. So the team has also shared my email on the chat box, so feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you again. Thank you, Professor, and I hope to see you all in Carcavelos soon. Thanks so much. Thank you.